This Health Ranger Report Pandemic Podcast is brought to you by NaturalNews.com for uncensored reporting and HealthRangerStore.com for lab-tested preparedness supplies such as storable food, full-face medical masks, biostructured silver first aid gel, and iodine, only while supplies last. Saturday, April 11th, Pandemic.News, Mike Adams update here. Thank you for joining me. Today's podcast is about the non-scandal of the death certificates. Now, a lot of publishers across independent media, whom I strongly disagree with, are trying to say that the death certificates are being faked because the COVID-19 deaths are being presumed and not confirmed. Well, that's nothing new on death certificates. If you drag 100 bodies out of a collapsed building, the death certificates will say something along the lines that describes the fact that a building collapsed upon these people, even though you can't prove it. Maybe you don't have video footage. You can't actually prove it. Probably no autopsies are being done. So it's presumptive that they died in a building collapse. That is not a scandal. Or if 50 people die in a horrible fog-induced highway accident, you can't absolutely prove that every person died in the accident. And by the way, a lot of those people will have underlying health conditions such as cancer, high blood pressure, diabetes, or Alzheimer's, and so on. Doesn't mean that they died from cancer. They died from the automobile accident because they were dragged out of the car, the mangled steel, on the scene. And so it's presumed that they died from an automobile accident, even though you can't prove that they didn't die from cancer. So when you're dealing with a pandemic, and your hospitals are overrun, like in New York City, with people who are presenting all the same respiratory symptoms, and many of them are testing positive for COVID-19, then, of course, when there are mass deaths there that are way above the average normal daily deaths, most of those deaths are going to be due to the pandemic. And when they share symptoms with other people who died from the pandemic, it's not unreasonable to presume that that's what killed them, even if they have underlying health conditions. Now, the numbers aren't going to be perfect, but they never are. They never are. You know, I've even made the argument for a long time that people who are said to have died from cancer have actually died from chemotherapy. But they're never really recorded as dying from chemotherapy. They're said to have died from cancer. So there are mistakes in death certificates, but it's a very tiny number compared to the huge bubble of additional deaths that we are seeing every day. In the United States right now, about 2,000 additional deaths per day because of this coronavirus. Now, normally in the United States, on any given day in a normal year, about 7,500 people die. Did you know that? About 7,500 people die. But right now with coronavirus, that is becoming closer to 9,500 people. It's above 9,000. So, and yes, a lot of those people have underlying health conditions. And what it means is that we're going to have fewer deaths for the remainder of the year after this coronavirus bubble kills a lot of people who were, yes, close to death, but it's still the virus that killed them today. So now, as we see in the independent media, everybody's getting into an argument over what is meant by the cause of death. And the right answer is what killed them today, not what would have killed them 6 months down the road. In fact, this year, we're going to see, trust me, we're going to see lower levels of deaths from influenza because a lot of the people who would have died from influenza have instead been killed by the coronavirus. We're going to see lower deaths from cancer and high blood pressure and many other degenerative conditions. Why? Because those people were first killed by coronavirus. It doesn't mean that the coronavirus didn't kill them. It just means that the coronavirus killed them first before they could die from something else. But isn't that always true for everybody? One day you're going to die. I'm going to die. We're all going to die. The question of what kills us is what happened on that day that killed us. And if you think about it, everybody dies from the same cause, which is really lack of blood to the brain. Lack of blood to the brain kills everybody. So you could technically say that all death certificates are wrong, that they should all say lack of blood to the brain, because that's ultimately what kills everybody. So if you really want to get into this argument about what is the cause of death, then you're all wrong. Everybody's wrong, because it's always lack of blood to the brain. Whether it's a gunshot or a car accident or the coronavirus or cancer, what kills people is lack of blood to the brain. Because if your brain has blood pumping, you're still alive. So again, it comes back to the question of what killed the person today. And in the case of COVID-19, typically it's the fact that they're drowning in their own lung fluid, or in a few cases, they're dying from brain damage. But ultimately, it's about the inability for their blood to be able to transport oxygen. But what caused that? Well, it's the virus. The virus is causing that. Now, granted, there are, there's 5G effects that may alter hemoglobin and its ability to carry oxygen. That is absolutely true as a possible factor here. But it's the virus that's the overriding incident that caused them to be unable to pump blood or oxygen, that is, to their brains. So the virus is the proximal cause, as it's said. It's the closest cause to what led to them being unable to pump oxygen to their brains. So the virus is the cause of death, regardless of underlying conditions. So this argument that a lot of people are making that say, well, these people had cancer anyway, they would have died anyway. That's not an argument. That's a non-argument. It's a non-scandal. Almost everybody who dies has underlying health conditions all the time, every day. It doesn't mean they didn't die. I mean, again, it's a non-argument. So what we're really seeing here is across independent media is all of these really desperate efforts, these far-fetched efforts to try to cling onto these non-arguments, to try to claim that the coronavirus is a hoax and nobody's dying. And it's nonsense. It's all nonsense. And it's just, but it sure is amazing to see the lengths that people go to try to claim that nobody's dying from the coronavirus. It's really amazing. I've seen some very insane arguments, like the one that says, well, these people would have died anyway. That's always true. Everybody would have died anyway. The question is, what killed them today? And right now, the number one cause of death in America is COVID-19, the coronavirus. It's killing people like nothing else. It's killing more people than cancer, more people than smoking, more people than automobile accidents by far, more people than influenza by far, more than 10 times. It's actually killing about 20 times the number of people who would normally die day to day from influenza, in case you're curious. So it's 20 times higher death rate right now than influenza. And so the people out there arguing, oh no, influenza kills more people. Not even close. Not even close. They can't do math. It's incredible. Influenza kills about 94 people a day, averaged across the year, even though those deaths are clustered more in the winter, obviously. But averaged across a year, day to day, it's 94 people. But even if you say that most of those deaths occur in the winter, which is true, you could say, okay, in the winter, maybe there's 200 deaths a day for, half the year, or maybe there's 250 deaths, and maybe there's 300 deaths a day in January, something like that. You could make that argument. Okay, well, coronavirus is killing 2,000 people a day right now. And if we hadn't done the lockdowns, that number, trust me, because I've done the modeling, it would have been 50,000 a day by July. There would be 50,000 Americans dying per day by July if we had not had the lockdowns. And I called for the lockdowns early on. Now I'm calling for ending the lockdowns with the knowledge that we have about what can prevent infections, which comes down to masks and more testing and elderberry and vitamin D and zinc and things like that. We now have the knowledge to end the lockdowns. But if we did not initiate the lockdowns in mid-March, we would right now be on track to 50,000 deaths a day in America by July. And yes, I've done the models, I've done the math, and I know that that's exactly where things were headed, which also brings up a final point. Some people are out there really criticizing the early projections, saying, oh my God, the projections were wrong. Well, the projections came with a warning that this is where things are going if we don't have lockdowns. And I was very careful in my own projections to say, if we have strong social distancing measures, then these projections will change. They will get much better. And that's exactly what's happened. So even my own projections about my projections have been accurate, knowing that the lockdowns worked and that the exponential spread of the virus was mostly interrupted. And the fact that we're going to see a downward trend in hospitalizations, which has already started to happen, and deaths, is because of the social distancing. It's because of the lockdowns. And also because people are taking zinc now and vitamin D and vitamin C and elderberry and all these things. But if that's because America got smart enough to enforce social distancing and stop this exponential curve. But if we end the lockdowns without masks, then we will just restart the same exponential curve and we'll be right back on track to millions of deaths unless we take precautions. So that's the lesson for today is really, yes, we can end the lockdowns, but we have to be smart about how we do it. Otherwise, we'll just reignite this whole exponential curve and end up with far too many deaths yet again. So thank you for listening here. Mike Adams, pandemic.news. Now truly the most correct and most authoritative source on the coronavirus outbreak in the independent media. Thank you for listening. I mean, there's a lot of good publishers out there. We're one of them, but we've done the models and we've been proven correct again and again. So if you really want good information, check out pandemic.news. Thank you for listening. When it comes to prepping, you not only need good products that can help keep you alive, awake, aware, and nourished during difficult times, you also need products you can trust. At the Health Ranger store, we do extensive laboratory testing using an in-house lab that's ISO accredited. It's inspected, it's audited. It's a 2-year process to even get that accreditation. We use multiple mass spec instruments, state-of-the-art science. I'm a published science author as well and a patent holder on several technologies, some of which we use variations of in our lab. The purpose of this lab is to help you make sure you get clean foods, superfoods, storable foods for emergency preparedness and survival use. We have a certified organic lab-tested, what's called Ranger Bucket collection of storable foods with some survival gear in the buckets to help you even boil water and cook those foods and so on. It's a fantastic product. We can barely keep it in stock even during normal times. In a crisis, we'll be wiped out of this product because it actually takes us a lot of time to make those products. But if they're in stock, you can get them now at healthrangerstore.com/prepwithmike. In fact, go to that URL, healthrangerstore.com/prepwithmike, and you'll see some of our survival and preparedness supplies, including iodine, colloidal silver products and gel first aid products, storable foods, superfoods, medicinal herbs for first aid, and much more. We have a lot of products for you to help you be self-reliant, to be safe, to survive difficult circumstances, natural disasters, and all kinds of things. If you want to get prepared, do it with us at the Health Ranger store so that you know you're getting safe, clean, laboratory-verified preparedness foods, supplements, and other related products. Again, the URL is healthrangerstore.com/prepwithmike. All one word, no spaces. Prep with Mike. I'm Mike Adams. Thank you for your support. Thank you for watching. If you want to support our mission, visit us at healthrangerstore.com for the world's largest selection of lab-verified superfood and nutritional products for healthy living. It's at healthrangerstore.com.